Yo, 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 dear listeners, it's your boy Ethan, the guy who makes grammar fun and pizza romantic, back to save the day on Sip&Talk. Big news, folks. Congrats to us. We've crashed the top 100 podcasts of the week again. Our global listeners are averaging 40 years old. Pretty cool, right? So, are you one of the younger crew or the wiser bunch? Drop a comment and let me know. All right, let's dive into today's vibe. Picture this. You're 40. Yeah, you, the one listening. If you're 40, come on, raise your hand, or at least nod in your head. Starting to feel it, huh? Body's creaking a bit, knees popping like a bowl of Rice Krispies. 2 drinks in and you're ready for a nap. And maybe you're wondering, this job I'm doing, is this really what I want to do forever? Suddenly it hits you. Time's not endless, energy's not infinite, and that life checklist still has a ton of boxes unchecked. So, what do? Today, we're chatting about being 40. How do you tackle your job and your real life goals? We've dug up a bunch of juicy stats and insights, including some awesome notes you crazy listeners sent in. Stick with me. Let's figure this out together. What's your move at 40? Hit the comments. All right, don't worry, gang. Today's not my solo gig, though I know you all love me to bits. Maybe next time, huh? If your love for me gets too wild, I'll be back. For now, I'm handing the mic over to your real hosts, Sunny and Joe.
So today we're kind of cracking open some interesting source material we received. Navigating work, life, personal goals.
Yeah, specifically around that, that 40-year-old mark, give or take.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe you're heading towards it. Maybe it's just kind of popped up in the rearview mirror.
It really does feel like 40 often acts as this sort of pivot point, doesn't it? Based on what we've seen in the sources. It's where you might start noticing, I don't know, new sensations. Maybe a joint makes a funny noise.
Huh. Yeah. Tell me about it.
Or you catch yourself really questioning the career path you've been on for years.
Mm-hmm.
There's this dawning realization, I think, that time and energy, they aren't quite the boundless resources they maybe felt like 10 years ago.
Absolutely. That feeling of, hang on, I'm 40, my body's starting to file complaints, and I'm rethinking everything. It's a significant moment.
Yeah.
And the sources you sent over, they really dive straight into this. They acknowledge it. They basically say, look, this stage brings up these feelings. It's actually a perfect time for reflection.
Whether you're right at 40 or a bit younger or maybe older looking back.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive really is to unpack what these sources are saying about how to approach this phase.
It seems to boil down to finding that balance, between building future security, the practical stuff, money, health, and actually genuinely living now, experiencing the present.
Yeah, and the material offers this really interesting mix. You get some, let's say, necessary reality checks.
Definitely some of those.
Genuinely practical advice, some data points to kind of ground it all, and thankfully, yeah, a bit of humor too.
Which you kind of need, right? Because figuring this balance out feels pretty complex sometimes.
Totally. So ultimately, by the end of this, we hope you listening will gain some clarity, maybe even some actionable steps that feel right for your situation.
Okay, so where do we start?
Well, let's unpack this first big idea that really jumps out.
Right.
That stark realization around 40 that, okay, time is finite. And because of that, you kind of need to get serious about maybe redefining your priorities.
And what's fascinating is how the sources frame this. They actually use data points, like mentioning the average life expectancy in Taiwan being around 80.4 years.
Okay.
But then, and this is the kicker, they pair that with research suggesting your healthy life expectancy.
Right.
The period before chronic issues or maybe reduced mobility really impact things.
Yeah.
It might be closer to 70.
Okay. Healthy life expectancy, 70. So that 80.4 average, it's not the full picture, according to this research.
Sounds like it.
So if you're 40 now, that leaves maybe 20 to 30 years of what this material calls high-quality time. That's a pretty sobering thought. But actually, it also feels incredibly clarifying in a way.
How so?
Well, it's not forever, obviously, but it's definitely not too late either. It puts a frame around it.
Yeah, it really does. And this brings up that crucial question the sources encourage you to ask yourself. What are the things you absolutely don't want to leave undone with that high quality time?
Right. And it's not just about, making a generic bucket list.
No, it's about identifying what's truly important to you. Specifically, is it financial independence? Is it deeper family connections? Certain travel? Pursuing some dream you've always had? Once you kind of pinpoint those, then you can start consciously putting your most valuable resources, your time, your energy towards them.
It reminds me of that bit of humor they included.
Yeah.
You know, you might have a third, maybe half your life left.
Which sounds like a lot.
It does. But, as they point out, time can just vanish incredibly quickly, like binge watching a show that keeps adding final seasons.
Yeah, exactly. So recognizing that limit seems to be the essential first step.
Okay. And then, going hand in hand with that limited time, the material really gets into the role work plays in all this.
Yeah, work is obviously crucial for security, right? Retirement savings, healthcare, just general stability, especially, with all the uncertainty in the world.
For sure. But here's the critical point this material makes. Don't let securing the future completely suck the life out of your present. The sources strongly caution against just overworking constantly. It's that classic trade-off.
Right. You might be piling up wealth, but if you have zero time or energy left to actually enjoy any of it, what's the point?
Yeah, what's the actual benefit? They have this really vivid phrase for it. You risk becoming a ghost legend in your own bank account.
Oof, ghost legend. I like that.
All accumulated profit, but no actual life being lived now.
And just to be clear, it's definitely not saying, quit your job and abandon all responsibility.
No, not at all.
But it does push you to ask, how much security is enough for you at this stage?
And it points to shifts even in cultures traditionally known for being very work-centric. Like younger generations maybe prioritizing flexibility or mental health over just climbing the corporate ladder relentlessly.
Suggesting that values might be evolving beyond just the title in the corner office.
Yeah, it frames work more as a tool to help you build the life you want, rather than letting work become your entire life.
So the focus shifts maybe from just putting in more hours to, working smarter, developing skills that have a higher impact, or finding roles that offer more flexibility.
Exactly. The core question isn't really, should I work? That's kind of obvious for most people. It's more like, should I actually live while I'm working, or am I only working for some hypothetical living way off in the future?
And living, according to these sources, means actively, consciously seizing the present, especially at this 40-ish point.
Why especially now? What do they say?
Well, they're quite direct about it. Some experiences, whether it's, say, backpacking through a certain region or really dedicating time to learn a critical skill like dancing or a craft, or even just being fully present for specific moments in your kids' lives or your parents' lives. They just feel different and are experienced differently when you generally have more physical energy and potentially fewer health limitations.
Okay. That makes sense. It connects back to that healthy life expectancy idea.
Precisely.
And the humor they use here lands so well because it's just so relatable, isn't it?
Totally.
The idea that you'll just wait until some imaginary retirement to learn scuba diving.
Or take that month-long trip through Italy.
Right. Only to find, oops, your body has other plans by then, or your doctor advises against it.
And you end up drinking some, perfectly adequate wine from the local shop instead of sipping it in a Tuscan vineyard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's funny, but also a bit sad if it happens.
And the material actually references the Harvard study of adult development here.
Oh, yeah, the long-term one.
That's the one. It found that the things people really cherish later in life, the most satisfying experiences, they tend to come from meaningful relationships, opportunities for adventure, personal growth.
Not just from how much money they made or their job title.
Exactly. Which really backs up this idea that delaying everything until someday might mean you miss out on the most valuable stuff altogether.
Okay, so the practical suggestion here isn't like, quit your job tomorrow and become a nomad.
Definitely not. It's much more pragmatic.
It's more like, make a list. What do you genuinely want to experience or do now or relatively soon?
Then figure out what time, energy, resources they actually need.
And then commit to doing just, say, one or two of those things each year.
Even small things count, like dedicating one evening a week to a hobby you love or planning a really meaningful weekend trip. It builds momentum.
Yeah, it's about cultivating that sense of deliberate living, but without letting it turn into some kind of anxious fear of missing out.
Right. Okay, so bringing these ideas together, we've got limited time, the role of work, the value of the present. How do the sources suggest we actually balance all this? Because it feels like a tightrope walk.
It really does. And they basically say, look, you have to acknowledge the trade-offs, right? Between optimizing purely for future financial security and optimizing for present freedom and experience.
You can't perfectly maximize both at the same time.
Probably not. They suggest you don't have to aim to be like an extreme financial samurai saving every single penny for some grand retirement reveal party. Instead, the goal is maybe more like being a life ninja.
A life ninja. I like that too. What does that mean?
Saving enough for a reasonable future, definitely. But consciously, skillfully weaving in moments of happiness and meaningful experiences along the way.
Okay, so a blended approach. And this is reflected in concepts like, didn't they mention barista fire?
Yeah, they did. For anyone not familiar, it's basically a version of financial independence where you have enough passive income coming in to cover your basic needs.
Right, so you're not totally dependent on a full-time job.
Exactly, which allows you to maybe work part-time or freelance just to cover extras or boost savings, rather than needing that full corporate salary or aiming for super early complete retirement.
It's a middle ground then. Offers a baseline of security and gives you significant flexibility in the present.
Yeah, it really highlights that life doesn't have to be this rigid black or white choice, you know, career obsession or reckless abandon.
The material seems to emphasize that a blended approach, one that you adapt to your own circumstances and priorities, is often the most realistic and maybe the most fulfilling path through this period.
And speaking of realistic paths, we have to talk about uncertainty. The sources are super clear on this. Nobody has a crystal ball.
Nope. The future is inherently unpredictable. Unexpected health stuff, economic downturns, jobs changing because of tech, global risks.
It's true. Planning for the future can feel a bit like trying to predict the stock market sometimes.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it crashes, sometimes you just wish you had a reliable fortune teller. And the material also notes that career uncertainty itself is a huge source of anxiety for lots of people across different ages.
So the suggested approach isn't really trying to predict the unpredictable. That's impossible.
Right. It's more about building resilience and maintaining flexibility.
Make smart, reasonable plans for the future, absolutely. Save diligently, get adequate insurance, invest wisely, all that good stuff.
But crucially, stay adaptable. Be ready to adjust your course if things change drastically.
It's about building confidence, not just in your specific plan, but in your ability to cope with whatever life throws at you.
How do you do that?
Well, they suggest things like developing new transferable skills, maybe exploring multiple potential income streams, and intentionally working on your psychological resilience, being able to bounce back.
Okay, that makes sense. Build a buffer, both financially and mentally. So given all this, the limited time, work's role, valuing the present, finding balance, building resilience, how does the material suggest we actually do this? What are some concrete methods or mindsets?
It really seems to start with small, intentional steps. The sources emphasize actually carving out fixed time each week.
Like scheduling it in?
Yeah, scheduling it, even just a few hours, specifically for things you genuinely enjoy. It could be exercise, dedicated reading time, actually connecting with friends, pursuing that hobby.
And they cite research suggesting that even just 6 hours a week spent on enjoyable, non-work activities can make a real difference.
A significant difference. Reduce stress, boost overall happiness, potentially by 20%, according to that data point.
Wow, a 20% happiness boost from just a few hours a week that really drives home that you don't necessarily need some massive life upheaval to start feeling better now.
Exactly. Consistent small joys can add up.
And the sources also mention practices like gratitude and mindfulness.
Yeah, intentionally focusing on and appreciating what you have right now. Apparently, this can help dial down the anxiety about what the future might lack, and it also helps clarify what truly matters to you personally.
Makes sense. And breaking down bigger goals too, right?
Absolutely. That big trip you want to take eventually, or maybe switching careers. Identify the very first small, manageable action you can take this week, maybe this month.
Build experience, build resources gradually. Don't try to leap the whole canyon at once.
Exactly. And they humorously remind you that living a high-quality life doesn't mean you have to be, living like some Harvard professor giving lectures or an extreme athlete scaling mountains every single day.
Oh, right.
Sometimes, simply enjoying a quiet Wednesday evening with a cup of tea and maybe writing a few lines in a journal, that is a moment of high quality.
It's about the steady accumulation of positive experiences and fulfilling moments over time, not constant fireworks.
Precisely.
Okay, so ultimately, all these different threads, time, work, present, balance, resilience, small steps, they seem to converge on this final mindset the material emphasizes. Living a life that feels genuinely, authentically meaningful to you.
Yeah. The core message isn't about setting up work and life as these opposing forces locked in some epic battle.
Yeah.
It's more about understanding what fundamentally gives your life meaning, and that can be different for everyone.
For some people, that meaning might really come primarily from the stability, the security, the impact they build through their work, and that's okay.
Absolutely. For others, maybe it's found more strongly in adventure or personal growth, relationships, diverse experiences outside of work.
And the sources suggest doing these regular soul checkups, maybe a couple of times a year.
Yeah, just pausing to honestly ask yourself, does my daily life feel aligned with my deepest values right now?
And if your work feels totally soul-draining and completely misaligned, maybe some adjustments are needed.
Or, conversely, if you're chasing experiences so hard that you're creating unsustainable risk for your future, maybe it's time to pull back a bit. Find that balance again.
It's not necessarily about living some kind of hot-blooded, intense life every single second. Often meaning is just having clarity on what you're doing and why, who, or what you're doing it for.
There's that quote they included, attributed to Viktor Frankl, that fits perfectly here. Something like, life is not about asking what it means, but about responding to the challenges and responsibilities it gives us.
Yeah, it's about finding your personal response to life's invitation.
Exactly.
So there you have it. Hitting 40 or being around that age doesn't have to be a crisis. Based on this material, it's really presented as a crucial opportunity, a time for some strategic life rebalancing.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The core takeaway really seems to be finding your unique personal equilibrium, balancing that essential future security financial health with actively allocating your time and energy to genuinely living and finding value in the present.
It means pragmatic planning for the future, yes. But just as important is intentionally carving out that time and energy for what brings you joy, growth, connection right now.
And the material is clear. There's no single perfect answer that works for everyone.
No. It involves accepting limitations like that finite, high-quality time, deliberately redefining what's most important to you.
Viewing work more as a flexible tool, not the entire point. Truly valuing present experiences.
Finding a flexible middle ground that maybe blends security and freedom, and building that resilience for whatever uncertainties the future inevitably holds.
Ultimately, as the material highlights again and again, the aim is a life that feels deeply meaningful to you. Whether that meaning is rooted more in the security you build or in the richness of the experiences you gather along the way.
So here's maybe a thought to leave you with, something drawn from the heart of this source material. Instead of dwelling too much on what can I still do? Perhaps the more powerful question to ask yourself right now is, what do I absolutely not want to leave undone?
Ooh, that's a good one. Or maybe consider this perspective they offered. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give your future self is simply doing less.
Doing less.
Doing less of the things that don't truly matter to you right now.
Clearing out the clutter to make space for what does.
Exactly.
Powerful stuff. So maybe take some time to reflect on your own unique priorities and think about what those small, meaningful steps might look like for you starting today.
Well, folks, that's all the deep diving we have time for today. Hope you found that useful.
Yeah, definitely a complex picture.
If you did find it interesting, please make sure you hit that subscribe button for the Sip and Talk podcast. Keep up with our dives.
We appreciate you tuning in.
And hey, while you're at it, why not pop over and check out our good buddy Micky's YouTube channel? Give him some love. You know you want to.
Always good stuff over there. Thanks for listening, everyone.
See you next time.